Hey everyone, my name is Matt Gear and I'm an SE for Cisco Meraki. What I wanted to do this morning was spend a little bit of time with you to talk about a new feature that's come to CMDS. Just as a recap, right, what is CMDS? That is an on-premise Rocky Linux-based server platform that provides network services like NTP, DHCP, and DNS to either a lab environment or a production environment if needed, uh, that then has feature sets built into it to, up to this point in time, allow you to do migrations from the C9300 to the Meraki Dashboard natively, right, for Meraki management. And the new one that we're going to talk about today is Catalyst monitoring for wireless. So the feature sets inside of CMDS here is allowing you to manage your iOS versions, get it upgraded to the approved version for monitoring in the Meraki dashboard, and then actually running you through steps, if you will, to get the WLC prepped, make sure that there's sanity checks around the software configuration, making sure that you are getting the WLC onboarded into the dashboard itself, claiming the devices, and then allowing you to manage the access points and the WLC for physical addresses, right? Because we're going to move these devices onto the map inside of the Meraki dashboard. And then enabling AVC if you have DNA licensing in your environment, right? So the idea behind it is that we can give you just a natural progression of steps to be able to get your WLC or WLCs onboarded into the Meraki dashboard for wireless monitoring, get everything cleaned up, and help you get on with your day, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to take a look at a pair of WLCs that I have in my environment, and then we're going to jump in and get these pair of WLCs into the Meraki dashboard. Okay. So right now you can see that I have a Catalyst 9800 LC series of wireless LAN controllers. They are in redundancy mode right now, SSO. And you can see currently that we're at, excuse me, 17.9.5. Got a couple WLANs up, got 3 access points up in the environment, a couple different flavors here. We got a 2802, a 4800, and a 3802. And then from the licensing perspective, we do have, excuse me, no licenses in use right now, but we have enabled DNA-A on the WLC pair. Okay. So again, for this video, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a WLC, get its iOS XE updated to 17.12, which is the approved version for wireless monitoring at this point in time, and then getting it claimed, onboarded, and cleaning up anything relative to the environment. All right. So let me bring up my screen here. And so this is the CMDS interface, right? Now, as I mentioned, CMDS will also do C9300 iOS XE upgrades, get them prepped, and get them migrated for Meraki management into your dashboard. And the second feature here is Catalyst monitoring for wireless. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And the very first thing that I need to do is I need to run through the setup wizard. Now, the setup wizard tells me what username and password I'm going to use. It asks for my Meraki API key. It wants to know what image I'm going to use for the iOS XE upgrade, and you can have multiple if you needed to. But that's what the setup wizard entails, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And we can see that the setup wizard tells us, right, as of now, the code that is supported for this process is 17.12.3. And so if I want to download it, I can use this link here, which will take me to Cisco's website. Obviously, I have to have a CCO ID to download that code, but it brings us to the 9800 wireless section. And so once I get my code, downloaded to my workstation. Excuse me. What I can do is I can click on this link right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link, and I'm going to log in with the username and password that I created CMDS with. And then I'm going to go to my navigator component here. Now, what I need to do is I need to be in this directory. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that. And I need to upload my iOS image to this location, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click this button over here to upload a file. I'm going to grab 1712, and we can see down here that we're starting the upload process. Now, the other thing, and I'm just going to touch on it lightly for this component, right, is AAA new model, and we have to have SSH enabled for the WLC. So if this is a lab environment, or maybe you have only used the GUI for the duration of the time that you've had your WLC, definitely try to SSH into it, right? You should be able to use the GUI username and login that gets us to these pages. And if you can't log in via SSH, it actually says connection refused, right? Then what we can do is we can copy these couple lines of code here and come over to our 9800, and then we can go to administration and the command line interface. We can go to configure, and then we can paste those lines of code in there. And so what that does is that gives us IP SSH connectivity, and we should be able to log into the WLC with the GUI username and password at this point. Right? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is provide a username to log in with, and then the password for that username. And the next thing we need to do is provide the Meraki API key. So I'm going to grab that, paste that in there. And then here is where I specify my image. So again, I can just highlight that, copy it, paste it into the field, and we are good to go on our image, right? So the next thing I need to do is specify the IP address of the SP that I am logging into. Just like that. I'm going to press Control X, yes, to save the buffer, and press Enter. And so that's it. Our wizard is complete. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to start at the top of this list, and we're going to run a data collection and a file system cleanup on the WLC first. And before we do that, right, we're going to ask one more time, can you SSH into the WLC? And if you can't, here's a couple lines of code that will enable SSH for you. So I'm going to press the Y key there to say that, yes, we can log into it. And so at this point, the server is just going out to the WLC, and it's writing the config. It is going to copy a couple things via TFTP, and it is going to run a inactive file removal so that we have a nice environment, nice clean environment. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to deploy the iOS.exe image to the WLC that we want to use, right? So we're at 17.9. We're going to move it to 17.12. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy the iOS.exe image. Now we do give you a couple considerations here, right? If you are in an environment where you can not have a disruption, right? Maybe you're in medical, things like that, then you would probably want to use the GUI on the WLC for this, right? So this server does not work with ISSUs. Just want to be clear on that, right? What this server will do is it will deploy the image for you, and it will install the image for you. But it does not have the concept of ISSU. So if you do need to use ISSU in your environment because you're in a hypercritical environment where you cannot take a hit on downtime, then obviously I would recommend using the GUI or some other method, right? This server is going to cause a reboot in your environment unless you have an N+1 scenario, right? So maybe I have 2 pairs of 9800s, 1 pair is in SSO mode, and the other pair is in SSO mode, and I'm doing an N+1 via DHCP redundancy, something like that, right? But you guys get it, right? So right here, we can see that the IP address sitting at 210.10 has a version of 17.9.05 right now, and we are going to upgrade to 17.12, right? So yes, I would like to use this server to deploy the image. And so at this point, we're just deploying the image to the WLC, right? So we're only copying the file right now, right? We're not actually going to install it. So the benefit to that is that if you do have multiple WLCs that you're working with in your environment, what I'm going to do is while this is downloading, I'm actually going to show you a couple of utilities that we also have on the server. So down here we have a utilities menu, and in the utilities menu we have a couple different tools that you can use if you need to in your environment, right? So again, after we get to the version of iOS XE that we need to be at, we're going to do some sanity checks, right? We're going to make sure that you're running the version of iOS XE that you need. We're going to make sure that you're in install mode. We're going to make sure that the iOS XE is in install mode, right? We're going to make sure that the WLC is clean, meaning that it has not been onboarded in the past and maybe it was removed incorrectly, and we're trying to onboard it again, right? So it's going to take a look for some Meraki users that get installed by the dashboard. We are also going to look at things relative to like IP name resolution, right? Can the WLC get to the internet? Can it do name resolution, right? Because it needs to register to TLS gateways via DNS as we're going through this process. NTP is another component that it looks at, right? So the idea is that if you get caught in the sanity checks, you can come to the utilities menu and you can do things like update the DNS for the WLCs that are in your environment, right? You can also remove NTP and re-add NTP into the WLC configuration via iBurst, just in case maybe you had some stale records in your config, or for whatever reason your NTP isn't playing nice with your WLC, right? Because that is a requirement. We're going to be using TLS to get to the cloud. And when we're doing that, we want to make sure that we have good time. The other thing too here is deploying the AAA new model update. And so this is an additional utility. Now, if you already have AAA new model in your environment, that's working and it's great. You can SSH into the box and you have console access to the box, then you don't need to run this, right? But we do add it. We did add it because if you are in a lab environment or maybe you don't have a lot of experience with the 9800 or with AAA in general, when we added those lines to get SSH access and enabled or turned on AAA new model on the WLC, what happens on the WLC is that the console port also needs to be taken care of from a AAA new model perspective, right? So right now, in the state that we're in, based in this demo, the SSH connectivity to the WLC is good, right? But if I were to log into the console right now, it would tell me that there is an error in authentication from the console, right? So what we actually needed to do is add some additional lines to the console for it to be 100%, right? And so you can use option 5 here to do that, right? So that will update your SSH configuration if you'd like, right? Obviously, you need SSH connectivity for the server to talk to the WLC first, which is what we did. And then you can use this option to actually add console access to the WLC. And you can see that right here, right? We'll give you an overview and tell you this is what we're going to add for SSH, right? And then for console access, this is what we're going to add, right? So everything becomes authenticated in your environment. At the console level, it's going to ask you for a username and password. At the SSH level, obviously, it would ask you for a username and password, okay? So we'll go ahead and update that now. Okay, great. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you guys real quick here also, right, is the capability if you had multiple WLCs where you could actually do like a ping sweep against them, or right. So the idea here is that if you are doing an iOS XE deployment or an upgrade on multiple WLCs, then what you would be able to do is actually bring this application up here. And what I'll do is I'll actually just pull this out to the side. And we'll leave that guy up and running, right? So for any access, for any IP address that is actively being monitored, we'll see a nice screen up here. And then if we lose connectivity, network connectivity to the devices, as the terminal refreshes there, we'll see a red down, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video here. And when this image is done downloading, we'll go ahead and upgrade this WLC SSO pair. All right, so I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, so we're back. So we successfully deployed or copied the iOS XE image down to the WLC, right? One other thing I wanted to point out also is that this server has a scheduling component. So let's say that you did have multiple WLCs or you had a maintenance window and you wanted to actually schedule deploying or copying the iOS XE image down to the WLCs. That's something that you could do from here, right? So you could actually schedule up, a deployment at 1 a.m. The following day if it, suits you to go ahead and get that image deployed. Now, the other thing that the server does is it keeps track of everything that it does, right? So any intercommunication between any WLC and itself, you can see logging here, right? So active logging is an interactive log where, let's say you did schedule something up and, you set it for 1 o'clock in the morning. You went home that night, you maybe VPN'd into your environment. You could log into this server and you could see the active logging, right? So anything that is actively going on the server, you would see that information happening, right? So if we were pushing a config or if we were, if we were pushing the iOS XE image down, you would interactively see that from the console, right? The other thing is the full log, right? So this is a copy, if you will, of everything historically that, again, has happened as an intercommunication between the server and any WLC that it's talked to, right? So, let's say you did deploy, you would be able to see the information historically here when you came in the next morning to make sure that, you had that file copied successfully to all your WLCs in the environment, right? Okay, so let's go back. And the next thing we're going to do here is we are actually going to install the iOS XE update, right? So we got the file copied over. Now we're actually going to install it on the WLC. And so what happens here is this is just a very straightforward install, add file, boot flash, version of iOS XE, activate commit, no prompt, right? That's what the server is doing here to the WLCs. Now, let's use that scenario earlier, right? That you were in the SSO configuration and you had SSOs and an N+1, right? You could do something where you have global environment settings in here also, where you can update the batch IP address list, right? And the batch IP address list is just the IP addresses for those interfaces that are on the WLCs, right? So down here under my global environment settings, at any time, right, I can change my user login, my password, the IP addresses that I'm batching against, the iOS XE image that I'm using, right? So if I had multiple devices out there, maybe at different versions, and I wanted to group them together in 2s or 3s if I wanted to, right, and use a specific image to download, I can do that. And then if I need to at any point, if I select number 6 here, I can see the settings and what the server is programmed to do, right? Including the IP address list of the devices that it is interacting with at the time, right? So you can use the setup wizard to start basically, but then based on your planning and what you have in your environment, right, you can use a combination of scheduling events and the global environment settings to be able to one-off things if you needed to, right? So right now we have sent the command to the WLC to do its upgrade process. The server is returned back to the main menu. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video. And once we get the WLC back up, then we will actually start our integration to the Meraki dashboard. Okay, guys, so we are back. So we had an upgrade process that happened. And so from the monitoring perspective, we saw the WLC go down and then come back up. Now at this point, I should be on 17.12, right? And I got a couple different ways that I can take a peek at that real quick, right? If I wanted to, I could just log back in over here. And we can see now that we're sitting at 17.12.3, right? The other thing that I would be able to do, if I wanted to, is just a portion of the natural progression, right? So I'm going to come down here to my WLC monitoring setup, and this is where we start to do the checks to take a look at the environment and see what's going on. Okay, so the one thing to keep in mind is for if you do have SSO implementations in your environment, right? After you do an iOS upgrade, the pairs need to replicate some information, and so they may lock the configuration, right? And we've seen that for years and years and years, right? Back when I was a field engineer on 6500s with redundant supervisors, right? We had to wait a couple minutes until things came back up and settled down, right? So best practice, if you do have an SSO pair, just wait a couple minutes before you run this command. But otherwise, we can go ahead and press continue here. Okay, so the server is now going to go back out to the WLC, and it's going to get updated information, and then it's going to run that as a sanity check against the WLC. Excuse me, it's going to run the WLC's configuration as a sanity check against the server with a little bit of logic to make sure that everything looks good. Okay, so here is our sanity check. So things were looking good, and then we hit some red, right? So green is good, yellow is cautionary, red is bad, right? What I can do is I can come down here to my logs, and I can look at the monitoring setup log. And we can see here that the server was looking for a DNS entry on the WLC, and it did not find one, right? So what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go down to my utilities menu, and I'm going to update my DNS. I'm going to use an internal DNS server that I have in my environment. It can be any DNS server that you want, right? And so now the server is going to go out and update that information to the WLC, and then we'll run the setup again. Okay, so The other thing I wanted to point out too, right, is that if ever you want to see from a marker perspective where you are in the menu system, right, you can always come up here to the top left so we can see that we're in Catalyst Wireless Monitoring, CMDS, main menu, utilities, right? If I go back one, then I'm at the main menu, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run my monitoring setup again to see if we corrected that error that we had for the DNS entry. Okay, and so now things look a lot better. So the script completed and everything was green. Again, if I wanted to review that, I can go down to my logs. I can look at the monitoring setup log again. And right here, right, this is our last entry. We do timestamp things so that you can see where we're at. So we have nothing left over from a pre-existing onboarding process, right? WLC is in install mode. We're running the correct iOS XE version. NTP is good, so on and so forth, right? So at this point, we can continue in our process here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to register the WLC to the Meraki dashboard. Now, before we do that, what I wanted to do was talk about two things real quick here on the Meraki dashboard side, right? So in my environment, I just have an org that I created called Meraki WLC, and I have a network called WLC. Under organization and early access, you do want to make sure that we have opted in for the cloud monitoring for Catalyst Wireless. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, right, is that I created one network and I called it WLC. So in the demo this morning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my WLC in the WLC network, and then I'm going to leverage the site tags that my access points are in to be able to get a new network created, and we're going to put those access points in that network, okay? So just wanted to point that out real quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and register my WLC. And so what this does is this creates the, or enables the Service Meraki Connect command. And so we just put a little timer here to wait for the registration. I've had it register usually within 30 seconds, but you know, depending on network connectivity, things like that, right? Give it a little bit of a buffer here. So it's just going to count down, and I'll pause the video to save us a little bit of time. But once we get the countdown, then it's going to update the screen and give us some information about the WLC and its registration status to the cloud. All right, so I'll see you guys in about 20 seconds. Okay, guys, so we had our registration countdown here, and then the server produced the following information, right? So we have a config fetch succeeded from the Meraki tunnel. Our tunnel states, both on primary and secondary, are up and up, so that's good. And here are our cloud IDs that each WLC created, right? Because remember, we're in SSO mode, so we have 2 physical WLCs. So this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and press my enter key here. And since that was successful, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to claim the WLCs to the Meraki dashboard. So what this does is it presents the cloud IDs that we're going to onboard into the dashboard inventory. And then on the next screen, it's going to produce a list of organizations that the API key that I put in earlier is associated to. So I'm going to pause the video here because that API key is associated to multiple organizations. And for their anonymity, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. But I will walk you through verbally what I'm doing. So I went ahead and pressed the enter key. And now it produced the list of organizations that the API key has access to. And so it's just a numerical representation. So in my list, I'm going to select 36 for Matt Gear WLC, which is this organization here. Pressing enter, says it's selected organization Matt Gear WLC. It says devices claimed successfully, claiming process complete. So now I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen again. And again, it just comes back to the main menu. And now at this point, what we're going to do is we are going to go to our Meraki organization that we have here. And if I go to inventory, I now have these two devices that are showing up, right? So I'm going to grab these two devices. I'm going to add them to a network. I'm going to select WLC. And then I'm going to go ahead and create different networks based on the site tag for the access point, right? And then this is where I need to provide my privilege 15 user. Agree to the terms. Okay, so now you can see that our WLCs are in the network WLC. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the refresh here because you can see right now from a wireless perspective, we have what I'm going to call a Meraki approach for options. But when I refresh my dashboard here, that now updates to a wireless LAN controller, and I can click on list. So the onboarding process is pretty neat, right? The dashboard is going to automatically know the primary and secondary WLC if you are an SSO. It's going to merge them together. But what I do is I take a look at my primary WLC here, and I can see that it's online. I don't have an address for it, but what the dashboard is now doing is it's going out and talking to my WLC pair to collect information and get information about access points and things like that, right? So the next thing I'm going to do then is I'm actually going to come back to my menu here. I'm going to update the physical address for my WLC here. Now you can see that we do provide a reminder that you do need to move those WLCs out of general inventory and put them in the network that you would like to use. So for my physical address location, I'm going to go ahead and use my office here. Just like that, right? And so again, if I had multiple WLCs and they were in the same location, right, they would parse through this list of IP addresses. Now, if I come back over to my dashboard here and I refresh, you'll see that we've updated the location and moved the map marker for the WLCs. Now, the WLC is still in process of talking to the dashboard, right? Because we don't have information yet for the LAN IP, et cetera, et cetera. As we're going through the onboarding process, you will see like a light blue banner, almost the color of my shirt today, ironically, that will say onboarding is in progress, right? Interestingly, though, we do see that we have 3 access points here. But from that perspective, oh, it looks like we are starting to build out that network already. So you can see that my 3 access points have been brought into the dashboard. And so from that perspective, if I wanted to, I can move on to the next step here, right? Now, before I do that, right, I have 3 access points, so it was really quick, you know, nice and easy. You may have, 1,200 access points that you're onboarding. And so what you can do is, if you want at any time, you can check the registration status of the WLC and the access points, right? So if I check my AP registration to the cloud, you can see here that it provides the status of the access point, right? And so this is from the WLC's perspective of, has this access point done its one-time registration into the Meraki dashboard, right? So with that being said, what I can do is I can actually update the physical address for my access points. Now I have a couple options here, right? Maybe I have a centralized WLC and I'm going against or across multiple buildings or locations. if I wanted to, I can update all the access points to one physical address. If I wanted to, I can break that up, right? And we'll go ahead and do both. So I'm going to update all my access points to the same physical address. And so, we show you a reminder, right? Just make sure that you can see in the Meraki dashboard that, those access points are showing up, right? Because what we're going to do is grab the cloud ID and we're going to update the physical address based on that cloud ID. So I'm going to go ahead and use the same address that I used earlier. That looks good. And so I'm going to go ahead and press enter there. Okay, and we can see that we successfully updated those access points. So now if I come over to my network that was broken out based on the site tag that was created, I'm going to go ahead and click on Rec 03 floor 1 here. You can see I have my physical address updated, right? Floor 3, same physical address. Floor 2, same physical address, right? Now, again, like I said, right, maybe we're going across multiple locations here. So what the server can do is it will create a CSV file for you, and then we can import those based on the location, right? So I'll show you how that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an AP inventory sheet that I can download. And so it's going to create that CSV file based on the information that the WLC has. So we can see here that the server puts it in the root directory under a folder called WLC AP inventory, and then there's the CSV itself. So I can click on this link here and go over to my navigator again, same place that we uploaded our images, right? And I can go to my root directory. And here I now have this folder called WLC AP inventory. And here's my file. So I'm just going to right click on that file. I'm going to select download, select where I want to download it to. And then when I open this up in Excel, what it is it's really the raw format, right? So let's say I wanted to take floor 2 and floor 3, and I wanted to put that in a different location, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and copy these two fields here. And I'm going to come back to my terminal, and I'm going to update some APs to a physical address. So it's going to ask me what address do I want to use. And here it's now going to prompt me for the serial numbers that I want to use, right? The serial numbers that I want to update. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Exit, save it, write it. And so now the server is going to go out and update the two serial numbers there, right? So let's see, I did floor 2 and floor 3. So let me go back here. So floor 3 is now at that address, right? Floor 2, again, same address because I just updated it. And floor 1 is still at 4125 Highlander Parkway, right? So we have successfully updated the physical addresses for our access points as we've placed them on the map marker, right? Excuse me. We've updated the physical address and we have moved the map marker based on that address, right? Okay, so coming back to the server again, I am now going to do my last step here. And this comes down to if you have DNA A licensing in your environment or DNA E. So in my lab here, we're going to show the DNA A application here. And so what we're going to do, this is where we're enabling AVC and telemetry for our clients, right? So we're going to send some commands over to the WLC, and then we're going to query the wireless profiles that are on the WLC, find them, and then update them to participate in AVC, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and select that option. We're going to give you a reminder that this could be client interrupting, right? But we're kind of going through an upgrade process anyway, so hopefully you're doing this after hours. But if you are doing it during hours, right, when we shut down that wireless profile, you may, well, very high probability that you're going to lose client connectivity. Now, the nice thing about this, right, is that This is a rejoin process from the access point. This is not a reboot process from the access point. Okay. So we ask you if you want to continue. I'm going to go ahead and press Y for yes. We do run a sanity check to make sure that there is DNA licensing on the WLC, and in this instance, there is. And we just remind you to make sure that you have the correct quantity of DNA licenses as you're deploying here. If you only had DNA E, this would, for lack of better terms, this would error out and say that you don't have the correct licensing and just bring you back to the main menu again. Okay, so at this point, we have queried the wireless policies off of the WLC. And at this point, we can go ahead and update these profiles to turn on AVC for us, right? So that's what I'm going to do. So the one-time step that we need to create is the local flow exporters, and that's what the server has just done with the WLC. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go through that list of wireless profiles that were just presented, and we're going to update those for AVC. So here we can see we're updating Rec03 WLAN ID 2. And we're doing a shut and a no shut, right, where we are bringing it back up. And now we're going to do Rec03 WLAN ID _3, I believe was the next one I saw. And then since we had 3, I think the next one is the default policy. Okay, guys, so that is it. We have gone through the whole onboarding process for Catalyst Wireless. We've updated our access points to the physical addresses that we would like them to be at. And so going back to my WLC network here, go ahead and list my WLAN controllers here. You can see that we've collapsed that into one WLC, right? Which was the name of the WLC that we had the host name, right? We have our address updated. We've collected, the dashboard has done the work right here to collect all of our information on that WLC. Come over here, we can see that we are in redundancy mode. RP is lit up here. We can see the APs that are associated to this WLC, right? So on and so forth. Now, the last step here from the perspective of CMDS is this whole process was considered a batch, right? So we had one IP address but multiple WLCs that we were dealing with. We updated the access points, onboarded the access points, all of that fun stuff for this particular batch. The last thing that we would want to do here is run what's called a batch cleanup. And so what that does is that takes all of the information that we've had for this particular process, right? Starting at the iOS XE upgrade, any communications that the server had with the WLC, any interactions that we had after that. And so what we do is we collect that information and we put it in the root directory. So if I come back over to my CMDS interface here, right, and I go to archive, you can now see that we have Catalyst configurations for WLC, right? So I can take a look at my config here. If I want to take a look at my monitoring logs, and this is where anything has transpired between the server and the WLC, I can look at those logs natively as I would like, right? And then coming back up again, That is it, right? So we've carried everything over. Now, when we do a batch cleanup like that, right, the one thing that you'll see is from the global environment settings, we leave the API key in place. We leave the, we leave the API key in place. We leave the images that we have uploaded in place, right? But the batch list of IPs is now empty, right? So at this point, instead of running the setup wizard again, I could just come in here and update my next IP address SP and leverage it as I need to, right? So that is it, guys. I truly do appreciate your time today. I hope this was a good use of your time. I hope that CMDS could be a good tool in your environment as you're looking on the journey of doing Catalyst wireless monitoring in the Meraki dashboard. So I hope you have a good weekend. I hope you have a good morning, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And please come back for more videos. I'm not done yet. So definitely, please come back. Thank you.